Hello, all my crafty people out there. It's time for our weekly project. If you have not been here before, my name is Stephanie and I upcycle clothing, generally thrifted from my local stores. And we either make new clothes or accessories. So, this week I have thrifted a very common item, good old jean jacket. This one it was $5.99 at the American Thrift, and it's a little snug. It fits, but I'd like it to fit a little differently. And I think it's supposed to be fitted in the arms because of the way the cuffs are. So the arms don't give me as much trouble, but of course this part does. I would like not necessarily to button it, but to be able to button it. I know I would probably wear it like this anyway, but I think we can add a little character and maybe upsize it a bit with something we've used recently and I really got enthused about. Good old neckties. And this was my inspiration tie. And then I just kind of picked out a color palette to go with it. And I think these will work really well for what I have planned. And of course, if you're seeing this video, that means it actually worked, because this is something I haven't seen done before. We'll give it a try. Again, if you like this kind of content, if you want to see if I can do it, follow along, subscribe, like, and let me know what you think. And I'll catch y'all at the table. All right, here's our jacket. Our $5.99 jacket. I'll take that tag off. Don't need that. And I want to expand it a little bit, but I want to do it from the front, not from the back. We did it from the back the last time, and that worked out great. It gave us the expansion we needed. But this time, I want to do more than expand. I want to decorate. And I want to do it all at the same time, because I'm wild and crazy like that. So, this is my idea. I want to take the button placket completely off, including the collar, all the way around the collar. And I want to insert 2 ties. Now, at first I was thinking about the wide end down and up, but that changes the shape of my jacket a little too much. But the back end of the tie is very straight. It doesn't have any variation in size. Not really. That needs to be fixed at the bottom there. But I want them to go on either side of the button placket and around the neck. And I want to meet them at the neck back here and seam them closed. Essentially, I'm just going to be adding a little over an inch all the way around. And the reason I'm going to have a whole inch off of these ties is I'm going to use the backing process we used for the jeans for this as well. So I'm going to back these ties with a piece of fabric that's going to allow me to sew them on and not have to seam the edge of the ties. So I won't lose any width in the tie. Now, the thing I'm going to use to back it with, my mother-in-law was generous enough to donate some old stuff that she wasn't wearing anymore. And this is an old denim dress. One of those that just was kind of like a overall, you'd put a shirt under it. But it's got a nice long expanse of just straight denim fabric. So I'm going to be able to run the majority of the tie on this fabric. I might have to put one seam in it if I want to back the entire tie. But I don't think I'm going to need to. I think I'm going to back what I need for the front and the neck. And then for the ends of this, we're going to do something different. I'm not sure if we're going to need to back it or not. So this portion of the tie will be, it's still up in the air. We'll put it that way. But the thin part we know we're going to need for around the button placket and our neck. Now, so we've got the ties we're going to use. We've got the jacket. We know what we're going to cut up. And we've got the fabric we're going to use to back the ties to make it easier or at least cleaner when we insert them into the jacket. So first things first, before I cut the jacket up, I'm going to back, sorry. There we go. I'm going to back the ties. And I need to know how much of that tie I'm going to need to back to go around this collar. So, instead of using the tie, I'm just going to use a tape measure. Try to be smart about things. I'm sorry, my buttons keep getting caught on the side of my cutting mat there. So, if we take this and we stretch it out over this button placket and make it nice and straight, we're right at about 20.5 inches just to the collar. Then we're going to kind of have to bend it around, because just like we would our fabric, to kind of take up that excess. I'm going to roll it over here, and we get to about 25 on the shoulder seam. And then we want to go all the way to the back, and we want to go to the back to this center seam here, straight up. And that's about 29.5 inches. So a good estimate for me is that we're going to have at least 30 inches of the tie to go around one way or on one side. So one tie, 30 inches. Okay, I've got the dress cut up, and these are the nice flat panels from the back. Excellent for this process. And I am going to pin down the tie to be as straight as possible. And it doesn't really matter if it's perfectly straight, because we're just going to be cutting around it once we sew it down to the backing fabric. And I'm going to do more than 30 inches, of course, because I don't want to cut myself short, obviously. So 30 inches is about here. And I am going to go up to probably another inch or two up here, just to make sure I got enough to turn that corner around the collar. That's my biggest concern. That's my biggest question mark, I guess you could say. And you want to make sure you leave enough of the fabric on the side to make the seam, which I think if that's more than enough, this is just the hard seam that I'll be cutting off, but there's more than enough fabric there. And again, this is more like about 34 or 35 inches up here, so should be plenty. All right, I've debated over this. There's a couple of ways that we could get this tie put onto this jacket. We could sew it on before we ever cut it, but then we'd be sewing blind on this 1/4 inch seam that we want to use. And I've started marking that with this ruler. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to mark out this 1/4 inch all the way around the collar and down both the sides of the placket, cut it out, attach the tie to the body, and then worry about attaching back the placket. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes. So all I'm doing with this is I'm just running it along the side here of the placket, and I'm hanging it over a 1/4 inch from the edge of the placket, and I'm just drawing it with my washable marker. And I will do that, like I said, all the way around the edge of this placket. I've already done one side, just to make sure it wasn't too much of a crazy idea. And we'll start cutting as soon as I finish marking it out. I am also going to cut 1/4 inch seam allowances on either side of the ties to cut them apart and leave them on the backing, obviously. And I'm going to use my longer ruler for this because these are pretty straight runs. And I'm going to just measure off that 1/4 inch. And I might have to do it, obviously, in runs because ties aren't perfectly straight. So let me cut these out as well, and then we should be ready to assemble. Okay, I've got the first tie sewn on, and I went ahead and did that without y'all just so I can make sure I could do it. So you can see it's sewn from the bottom, and fortunately we used the hem of the dress so it won't fray down there. And I sewed it up the side. And then here's our tricky part. When we're turning the corner, which looks like this without the tie on it, the corner of the jacket where the placket and the collar meet, you have to turn the corner almost like a quilt corner, but not quite as sharp. So what I had to do was sew up the side to a point, maybe about a 1/4 inch away from the end, and then turn this piece from the neck in towards that to make that little pleat. It is going to be hard for me to explain that, but I hope you can understand it seeing it like this. And what that does is that completes the jacket as far as makes it a continuation of the body of the jacket. So when we attach the sleeve, the placket, hopefully we won't have any kind of bunching there. We're going to see. And I left it about 1 inch away from the center seam as far as sewing it on, because I want to sew these two ties together, and I'm just leaving them open until I get to that point. So this is the tie sewn on. Again, that's the center of the jacket, so we're about 1 inch away from the center of the jacket, so we can sew these together kind of like we would a binding of a quilt. But we'll see how that goes. Never done anything like this before. So let's go sew on the green tie. And all I did to sew these on was I took and pinned it on first, and I pinned it with the tip hanging off and the hems meeting. So just like this, I'm going to pin it all the way down and up the collar. Like I said, about 1 inch away from the center seam up at the back of the jacket. And then we'll figure out how we're going to push these two ties together and seam them together behind the neck. Okay, I got to join the back of the ties at the back of the neck and kind of line them up with the center seam of my jacket. So I cut them short, not short, just cut them off. I have plenty of seam allowance here. And I kind of gauge where I need those to be. I need this one to be about here, if I can get it to stay. They're thick, they're ties. And I think I can just seam across there. I'll just have to turn it over and line it up with this. I'm not sure the best way to do this, to be honest. I'm not a quilter, and I know there's some people out there looking at me like I'm crazy right now, but I think I can get this to work. Okay, we have the ties around the collar. And yes, I didn't have a special way of meeting these. Just, I'm sure there's a quilter's way to do it, and it's better than this, but it worked. There's no buckle. They meet the seam. So everything's on. Now, what have we done? We have added fabric to the body of this jacket, which means we've added length, essentially, to our collar. It's not a 1-for-1, which means our original collar will not fit. It will be too small. So we're going to cut it in the center, add a piece of tie to the center so we can make it long enough to go back on the jacket. Okay, y'all. I think, as you know, with these kind of projects, one shot is all you get. So, here's what happened. I was taking my seam out along this collar so I could take the other portion of the collar out here. And my seam ripper is really nice and good, and it took this out. So I have this ripped portion of the collar. Now, originally I was going to cut down the center of this collar, add to it, and make it long enough to go on back on the jacket. But now I've got another idea. I think I'm going to remove all of this from the back, since this collar, or since this portion is standing up so well as a collar itself. And I'm going to make lemonade from lemons. Isn't that how we do it? I'm going to add this back to here, and it'll be long enough to meet this corner. But when I get to this corner, I'm just going to tuck it underneath the tie. And we're going to keep the buttons, but we're just going to tuck it under the tie and kind of extend the button placket and leave this as our collar. And what I wanted to show you I was doing with the placket and what's left of the collar is I'm just going to pin it on either side like it should be. These will go in like that. And I'm going to sew it up to this point where the collar and the placket meet, that corner. And I'm just going to leave it until I can turn it out and then sew it into the rest of this neck. But for right now, I'm just going to cut the majority of the neck off. I'm leaving a healthy piece right there, but I won't need all of that because I'm going to turn that in and it's going to go under here. So let me finish pinning. We'll go to the machine, sew this down, figure out how we're going to turn these collars under, and that will be the strange journey of the neckline. Now we're going to take the collar, and we're going to, or what's left of the collar, it's the placket really, and lay it down, and we're going to top stitch right in the stitch that we've already got for these ties. And we're going to go around and catch the end of our collar here. And we're going to also turn under our little piece that we're not going to end up using, the backing. And we're going to continue top stitching in that line all the way around, all the way to the other side where we're doing the same thing. We're tucking it in like that. Alright, we've got our ties on, going around the neck. We got our button placket back on. We removed the whole collar. And we got little strays all over the place. And there is a roughness to the interior of this. And I may put a lining on it. I'm not sure. It's not rough as in feeling, just the appearance of it. So I could put a simple lining in it. All you'd need to do is take a piece of fabric that would go as far down as you want. You wouldn't have to go all the way down if you didn't want to. And make sure the edge of that fabric is finished, hemmed. And then just, let's see, if you lay it right side to wrong side here in the collar and then sew it down, you can use your same stitch line. And then just fold it in and you can tack it down. But that's a maybe, not sure yet. What I did want to do is I wanted to use the ties alternately, of course, the spots on this side, the stripe or green on this side, and cut open the sleeve and put a flare in the sleeve. The trick to that will be that it will have to be something that I can sew wrong sides out like you would normally, you know, because you can't get in this sleeve with your machine. And I'm not keen on taking it off or opening it up completely. So, that all being said, we're going to do something that everybody went crazy over, or, well, not crazy over, but there was some discussion. We're going to open some ties up. This will give us a thinner fabric and something we can also cut into the shape we want for this flare on our sleeve. So it's pretty simple to open these bad boys up. Let me get my seam ripper over here. This is a Brooks. Let Brothers. It's silk. It's made in the USA. You know, pretty average tie. But you take the little tag off. And once you take the tag off, then you usually can just slip your seam ripper right up the back of these bad boys and open them up. So let me take this tag off real quick. Don't cut your tie if you can avoid it. And this seam ripper seems to be on a roll today. It is super sharp. Don't know why. Don't remember it being this sharp before. All right. And then for this one, like I said, I was just able to seam rip it up. Let's see if we can get that lucky. Let's see. Oh, this is hand stitched. As these are hand stitches. This is a nicely made tie. And I'm just tearing it up. Okay, I opened both the ties up and I ironed them a little bit. Not too much. This is silk, so I didn't want to go too far. But these will be perfect for our inserts. They're about from the point that I probably want to use down here up to this point. They're about 23.5 inches long, which is perfect because my sleeve is at the highest point where I want to put these is about 23.5 inches long. And I'm not going to need that full, I'm not going to go all the way to the shoulder. I'm probably going to stop about a 1/2 inch away from the shoulder with my split because I don't want it to be fraying or anything at the top. Now you could take your sleeve completely off and do this. Might even be easier, but I'm not keen on reattaching it, so that's why I'm not doing it. Now we got to figure out the sleeve. I figured what we would do is we would cut, first I want to fold it on this bottom seam. And I want to do that because I want to preserve these pretty buttons on the side. Pretty as in, I like the style. So I am folding it with the seam down here. And I want to make sure that I have this lined up. And you can see with the grain of the denim that that's pretty good. It's got a weird little dart here on the shoulder, on the elbow, which is fine. I'm not too worried about that. But I don't want to lose my buttons. And there should be plenty enough room here for a seam allowance for me to put the tie in. And I'm just going to cut these down the center here. And like I said, I'll leave about 1 inch up here. Just, well, I said a 1/2 inch, but I might leave 1 inch just to make sure, I don't get too crazy. So let's just mark us 1 inch just to make sure we're even on both sides. So there's our inch mark. We don't want to go past that with our cut. All right. And we'll mark the same on the other side. And then we're just going to cut up the sleeve. All right, let's put these in our sleeves. I turned my jacket inside out. And what I thought I would do, I'm going to seam it right sides together. And I'm going to start at this point at the hem so I know that these match, because this is really the important part. And what will happen at the top is a little more flexible. So we're going to pin this down. I'm going to go up the side. And then we're going to have to, in order to make the point, it won't necessarily be a point. Up at the very top, I'm going to take and I'm going to clip our little V like you would for the welt pocket. And that will give us the ability to go all the way up on this side, on each side, and then we can, when we turn it under, we'll be able to turn that little point under and sew over the top. So let's get that done. Again, so sorry about the voice. Just one of those weather fun days. And we're not cold down here. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're supposed to get into the 50s by next week. That's just about freezing in our area. But until we do, it's just nice and sticky and humid. All right, before I finish pinning, I'm going to go ahead and make that little clip. And all I'm doing, I'm not making it deep, probably about a little 1/4 of an inch. And you see I'm just clipping it like that. And that will give us the ability to go all the way up, like I said, with our seam allowance. And then we'll turn it inside out and turn that little notch in and be able to sew over the top. Okay, we got the tie sewn into the sleeve, and now we're at this juncture in the process. We've got that little tab that's sticking out. This is still the wrong side. What I've decided to do, I think I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to pull the tie straight, and I'm going to sew a line across this, and I'm going to try and sew past where I cut that little notch so I catch everything, and then I'm going to turn it inside out, and we'll see what we get. We could do this together, because I've done this with other ones, but I had a different angle, I guess I should say. So let's see if we can do this. And what's our saving grace? Yep, that's right. Our seam rippers. We can always take it back out. So let's see if we can get across here. At least catch it. And that way we can turn it in. Let's see if we can. So when we turn it in, looks fairly good. It's a little notchy, but I'm okay with that. So there's our shoulder seam all sewn up. And that's our tie for the whole arm. It's hard to see from this angle, but that's the tip at the end. So let me sew the other tie in, and we'll try it on. Okay, everybody. I'm actually super pumped. I might still do a lining. Well, let's see. The spouse is insisting it would look neater. It's a denim jacket. I'm looking for rugged. I wanted to put it on to show you how much more room I got in it. No more forcing through the sleeves with my ties on my sleeves. I've got enough width in the front. If I wanted to button it, I could, but generally you don't button denim jackets. It's kind of like a look. So ties on the arms, opposing ties, and through the front all the way to the back of the neck. I'm actually really happy with the way this turned out. I was curious. The neck was an interesting challenge that I learned as I went, but I think it turned out pretty good. So if you like this kind of content, if you had fun, or you got some good ideas, like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Send me your ideas, and I will catch y'all on the flip side of our next project.